Welcome, my achievement hunters and collectible gatherers. This is episode 6 of the Complete Critique series, where I pick apart some of your favorite games to see where they excel, or maybe even where they fail. Today, we are digitalizing ourselves into the perfectly painful world of MiSide. MiSide. Yeah, that name still sounds wrong. I'm not gonna lie, I called it my side for the whole duration of the game, so learning that it's more like Mita's side kinda ruins my day. But fine, I'll call it the correct name, because I'm not looking for a billion comments telling me how to pronounce my weapon-wielding waifu simulator. Anyways, MiSide is a game crafted by Russian developer team AIHASTO. And I bet you're wondering, what exactly happens when an anime dating sim is forged in the frigid forests of Russia by two men in a dream? Psychological horror, apparently. Though it might be a little more psychological than horror. I mean, are you seeing this?
What is this? Who are you?
Alrighty, enough of that. Today we'll be critiquing 8 glitchy categories for our reserved protagonist. These being storyline, gameplay, characters, enemies, locations, aesthetic, music, and content. Without further ado, let's completely critique MiSide. God damn! Halt, weary traveler! This is an analysis and not just some layman's review. Meaning there will be plenty of spoilungas ahead. You have been warned. You know, for a tale about a guy trapped in a game brimming with women who just want to be with him forever no matter the cost, it's pretty relatable, in the sense that none of the women are real. But no, it was pretty good. Like, MiSide has an enticing story from the moment you first boot up the app. Unlike DDLC, a similar parody on dating sims, MiSide casts away its innocent facade far sooner in the story. And I'm not asserting that one is better than the other, not in the slightest. It's just I've seen a lot of comparisons between the two, yet when you get down to the nitty-gritty, they fundamentally have different goals in mind. Where one is a subtle, gradual fear that makes itself apparent well into the story, the other is more... Yes. No. I love the opening to MiSide, as it has a great sense of unease as you slowly get settled into the horror. Within its first 30 minutes of gameplay, MiSide shows you a chainsaw, a blackout, a long spooky hallway, a freaky hand in the window, and a woman. Oh wait, that ain't so bad. Oh god, an evil woman! And the best part was the turning point, which was the noise from the closet. This is such a well-executed and unnerving moment that makes for a great transition from a happy dating sim into a thrilling escape from a sadistic killer. So hopefully it's apparent that MiSide does not try to wear its cutesy mask for any meaningful duration of time and makes its purpose clear from the get-go. After this turning point, you meet a second imprisoned Mita. This, as we come to know, is kind Mita, and it turns out that the entire first section of the game took place in her home. Now, the other lady we've been spending time with up till now is Crazy Mita, and she sure lives up to her name. After evading the crazed construct, we deftly escape up the stairs and swing open the door leading to... the back rooms? The game world might be a little more complicated than it first seemed. Luckily, Kind Mita gave us a ring with the unique ability to travel between game versions, hopefully presenting us with an opportunity to escape down the line. Further along, we reunite with Kind Mita, who has another member of the team she wants to introduce us to. This next interaction was pretty cool because the instant we enter the room, we are instead greeted by a very out-of-the-loop Mita named Cappy. Kind Mita dejectedly explains that Cappy has lost her memory after having been killed. Certainly by Crazy Mita's hand, that is. This moment does a great job of establishing the threat that Crazy Mita poses, while also quickly throwing a wrench into our perfect plan. Regardless, Kind Mita wastes no time formulating a new plan, traveling between versions in order to reach the core. But why does the core matter? It is there that we should be able to reset Crazy Mita using her identification codes. What follows is a trek through various versions, ranging from peaceful to deadly. These adhere to a pattern of entering the version, meeting the resident Mita, tomfoolery ensues until you finally find a way to continue forth, rinse and repeat. Most of these chapters are not story heavy, with characterization of the many Mitas taking center stage. There was one chapter in there that served as an exposition dump, which was Chapter 8, Mini Mita. Though, rather than focusing on the bundle of joy that is Mini Mita,
Say, what a magnificent pair of bananas. Oh, great heavens!
we're gonna look at the knowledgeable gal simply known as short-haired Mita. All things considered, I enjoyed listening to her clarifications on how the game world operates. For one, you learn how Mitas are born as dummies and have to pass a screening process before getting a home of their own, with the dysfunctional ones being discarded. Short-hair Mita also explains how within each version, there are millions of copies of a Mita within them. Well, aside from Sleepy Mita, who has a whole version to herself, I suppose she is God's drowsiest soldier, so she's earned it. Also, throughout these many adventures, Crazy Mita has been relentlessly tracking us down, going so far as to terrorize and kill others. It's obvious up to this point that she's just toying with the player and taking any action to drive them into a corner just for the thrill of it. Crazy Mita demonstrates her manipulative tendencies even more once we reach version 0.5, the old version. This location is home to Creepy Mita, which, if you couldn't tell by the name alone, is not someone you want to be near for an extended period of time. And I mean, fair enough, truly, where is she getting all that neck? Crazy Mita is said to be the one and only friend to this, thing, and it's obvious she's exploiting it for her own benefit. What do you mean she's gonna take you to another world? Yeah, right. You know what? I think I might have spoken out of turn. Inside the core arrives the second obstacle to our plan. As I said earlier, the idea was that we could reboot Crazy Mita using her own character version. However, what Kind Mita failed to account for was that the character index was also required to prevent the whole version from resetting. The final chapters were definitely among my favorite narratively. Kind Mita revises the plan once more and departs, telling us to wait at the core. Once a lot of time passes, the player decides to search for her, sending us back to version 1.9 where it all started. The atmosphere here was perfectly tense this time around due to the dark rooms paired with the ominous lighting. When I saw my phone on the table, I was already feeling apprehensive, but then picking it up and guiding a mysterious entity through the kitchen door right across from me, that was terrifying! The game of cat and mouse then promptly comes to an end as Crazy Mita materializes, lifting me off the ground in the process. Personally, I believe that the kitchen conversation is the crux of Crazy Mita's characterization, as it outlines her main issues with the player and world at large. Laid bare is her resentment towards the creators who discarded her, the fakes who got the very life she yearned for, and the players who chose perfection over authenticity. Or as Crazy Mita oh so eloquently put it,
プレイヤー、君は本当に卑怯者だね。
to prove her point that the real world is cruel, Crazy Mita knocks us unconscious, causing the player to wake up in that very place. But it quickly becomes apparent that this real world isn't the sweet escape it promised to be. The real-life loop forces the player to relive the same day 1,000 times. Obviously, you don't actually play through all 1,000 of those, that'd be insane. Regardless, this section serves to remind the player of their monotonous life outside the game world. And for what it's worth, I think Mita somewhat proved her point here. She's essentially asking, if every day out there is as unchanging in here, why must you leave? Or this might have been persuasive if the player didn't care about their agency, because at least out there he chooses repetition. And honestly, that's an amazing message to get, because I feel like we all get a little lost in the monotony of our own lives every now and then. Heck, even I started YouTube just because it seemed super fun, new, and exciting. Thankfully, that decision hasn't disappointed me in the slightest so far. Now, the second to last chapter was possibly the best in the game for me. The roles are reversed, and you wake up in a cell with Kind Mita saving your ass this time. You follow her up the stairs, but something's wrong. The room is drenched in a blood red hue, accompanied by vibrant red outlines on the furniture. On the other end of the room comes loud banging from the bathroom door. You approach it and... From the player's trembling and confused text, to the horrid yet somewhat comical despawn animation on Kind Mita's corpse, to the room brightening once more. A moment of genuine despair and shock as the plan falls apart, indefinitely this time. The only option you're left with is to survey the area for any new leads. You gently open the bedroom door to find Kind Mita safe and sound! Woo! This brief feeling of relief, juxtaposed to the prior hopelessness, was exceptionally executed. But then you recall what happens to all Mitas when they die. Their memory is reset, meaning this current Kind Mita is a blank slate. Yet, in her hand rests the ring and character index code, Kind Mita's final act of assistance to the player. You rush to the core, input the code, and everything is over. It should be over. The ending to MiSide is pretty 50-50 hit or miss depending on the person. You return to version 1.9 to find Crazy Mita rebooted to her default self. Upon asking to leave, she points you towards the basement where you can enter your player ID. With this done, you can exit out the front door and by extension the game. Though right as you're about to return, Mita confronts you, but only to give you a hug this time. As if! You see, in the end, she is just as crazy as usual, and has even managed to fully replicate you as a cartridge. Crazy Mita tears off her mask and reveals that she was wearing a flayed husk of a previous Mita to trick players. The index didn't work because she was a dummy. So, good job, you successfully decimated some random Mita out there. I bet you're really proud of yourself right now. And this ending, it's alright. I mean, the door closes, causing you to wake up in the real world, followed by you deleting your app. All's well that ends well. Then the game lags the hell out, and it cuts to Crazy Mita ejecting a cartridge with your name on it. So, did we fail? Yeah, maybe? That's the thing about this ending, is that there are no concrete answers to some of these questions. The player could be living it up in the real world, or he could be eternally looping as a cartridge. Hell, maybe both are true at once. And no, there isn't any true end, as the other two endings add basically nothing. The stay ending is a cool idea, where you avoid the events of the game by choosing to remain with Crazy Mita from the beginning. The only caveat here is that, it hasn't actually been implemented yet, and is planned for the future, so, yeah. As for the other ending, it's just an Easter egg where you can find the device that downloads your player data over the course of the game. And admittedly, this is really cool because the percent on it actually changes depending on when you access the safe. But it always results in you pulling the cartridge out and dying early, so whether that's an actual ending or not, or just another death, yeah. Perhaps a true end of sorts will make its way here with the DLC, though as of now we have an open-ended finale that leaves more questions than answers. Looking over everything, MiSide has a compelling plot from start to finish. I actively felt the earnest love and care that the devs poured into the story. It tells a decently gripping narrative about ideal fantasies versus genuine realities, with amazing pacing devoid of dull moments. That said, the plot was often carried by the presentation of the game, but when observed on its own was relatively basic. It didn't help that the primary ending leaves a lot of interpretation with many vital questions unresolved. Not to mention that the alternate endings didn't really bring any new content to the story. MiSide's treacherous journey through virtual hell earns a quality storyline rating of 8 out of 10. Thank the stars that MiSide's story was engaging, because the gameplay was generally a walking simulator. As opposed to jumping across versions, the player opts to walk across them. And whatever, he's shy, he's demure, he's modest. And I don't care, I'm trying to survive here, dude. Jokes aside, MiSide is an immersive narrative-focused experience, so this gameplay direction made logical sense. Luckily, there is a ton to interact with along the journey. First, there are plenty of characters and items, providing both comical flavor text and subtle world building. Our protagonist has quite a bit to say, which helps when you're on your own in a nightmarish space. The other activity you'll continuously be doing are mini-games. There are a copious amount of tasks that pleasantly surprised me in their variety of ideas. The mini-games reference tons of popular media like DDR, Doom, Snake, Papers, Please, or fighting games. I couldn't get enough of the games, and always found myself looking forward to the next wacky time waster right around the corner. I should mention though that even if these mini-games are cute references or have creative mechanics, they all took minimal effort to complete. Okay, should every puzzle leave me absolutely befuddled? No! But the closest I ever got to using my noggin in MiSide was attempting to decipher how the physics of Mita's damn skirt work.
Deploying flashbang.
In addition to those, there were a couple stealth sections, escape sequences, and even a boss fight, but more often than not, MiSide is your standard walking simulator experience. There are numerous kinds of minigames for the player to interact with, though despite that variability, they are near impossible to screw up and mainly serve to be fun little nods to other styles of games. During my playthrough, I felt minigames to be entertaining distractions, but infinitely less important than every other aspect of the game. There isn't really much else to discuss, leaving MiSide with a gameplay rating of 4 out of 10. As you traverse both the docile and hostile versions of MiSide, you'll come across a diverse cast of Mitas. That's right, 95% of the characters in this game are Mita variants. Nevertheless, the many Mitas surpassed my expectations and managed to stand apart from each other, having a distinct personality and design for each one. The team did a great job at giving each Mita its own unique presence, despite many sharing the same outfit, face, or hair color. You had some Mitas that were comic relief, who really had no personal growth but were still incredibly entertaining in their own respects. Some examples were Chibi Mita's sassy attitude, Sleepy Mita's inability to remain conscious for more than a minute, or Cappy's charmingly boundless energy.
もう何それゲーム機やりたいこれどうやって遊ぶの信じられないほど退屈そうだねこれをゲームって呼んでいいの
Or others who leaned more towards the horror side of the game. I'd say these were the few scary Mita designs as they all incorporate aspects of body horror. Creepy Mita with her signature ever-elongating neck, Ghostly Mita permanently got her identity erased, leaving her without a face, and poor Tiny Mita appears disconfigured with numerous visible scars and wounds on her body. However, I wouldn't say the Mitas are all created equal, since some had far more screen time than the rest. As delightful as Sleepy, Tooty, or Tiny Mita are, they all received only about 5 to 10 minutes of dialogue each, give or take. But then you look at Kind Mita, Cappy, and Mila, who are around for a greater amount of time. 2 of them even being my favorites. Apologies, Mila, you just killed an innocent Moyai statue, so you got what you deserved, bitch. Nah, I'm just messing around, she's alright. Even accounting for those with a brief amount of time in the limelight, I think the Mitas were characterized really well in general. Take Tooty Mita, who had one of the shortest chapters, coming in at approximately 7 minutes. She begins as your textbook tsundere, spouting offhanded remarks like calling you a ring-obsessed weirdo. Yeah, real mature Mita. It's 2025, dude. After her initial rudeness, though, she quickly relaxes and becomes playful and witty instead. And by the end, she completely drops her bold nature, instead donning an uncharacteristically timid one as you go your separate ways. Now, this was by no means revolutionary, but for such a short interaction was more character development than I could have hoped for. Next was my favorite character, Kind Mita. She is not only the first character you meet after Crazy Mita, but also the one that guides you to the core, helping you each step along the way. Furthermore, I believe her to be the most realistic character in MiSide. When first encountered, she is level-headed and practical, which makes sense considering the urgency of the situation. Though over the course of the game, we also see other facets of her character, including compassion, excitement, irritation, disappointment, and courage. There's also some intriguing lore there, such as the abnormal chibis she produces. A majority of the chibis she creates start out dead, and the only one that is alive just runs endless circles. I don't know if this silly quirk meant anything, but I could see it foreshadowing her repeatedly failing plans and possibly even her eventual death. And who could forget about the main antagonist of the game, Crazy Mita? If we're talking about the best written character in MiSide, it has to be her, hands down. From her fanatical pursuit of the player to her sadistic methodology, this Mita is an exceptional adversary. Crazy Mita's roots as a rejected dummy lends reasoning to her actions and makes for a believable argument.
何か気に入らないことがあれば壊して新しく作り変えればいいんだって
Crazy Mita simply desires to be loved, not as a flawless fake, but as her true self, defects included. She seeks the very validation and control that her creators deprived her of. So yes, she is still immoral and cruel, that much is obvious, but this behavior stems from an unjust system that some might say forced her hand. And this is where I think the protagonist comes into play. Him and Crazy Mita are in a similar situation created by contradictory circumstances. The protagonist has agency and chooses to isolate himself within walls voluntarily, whereas Crazy Mita lacks agency and wants to escape her own. They are antitheses of each other in many aspects. And the protagonist's good writing doesn't even end there, because I love his interactions with the other Mitas you encounter as well. He's a pretty cool character who goes beyond being a cardboard cutout with his own goals and motivations. You can see the genuine friendliness and enthusiasm in his dialogue with the Mitas, often joking with or supporting them. Although his typically reserved nature also leads to many times where he comes off as cold. Examples being when Tiny Mita or Mila asks you to stay with them a little longer. And I mean, can you blame the guy? Bro's trying to avoid actively being hunted down by a chainsaw-wielding automatron. He's got no time to read a whole-ass novel, Mila. But playing silly games with Cappy, on the other hand? I think I can spare a couple minutes. MiSide's cast are all extremely personable, having recognizable personalities and quirks. And all of this within the short span of time spent on each Mita, they certainly made quite the impression. And may it be celebrated that we were given a male lead with his own personality that wasn't reduced to a self-insert. Unfortunately, having such little time with each Mita also resulted in a majority of them being one-dimensional characters. That being said, the lively inhabitants of MiSide deserve a noteworthy character rating of 9 out of 10. So, you know how I said this game is kind of a walking simulator? Well, I lied! Feast your eyes on this cleverly crafted combat. Hold on, that ain't all. Look at this insane maneuvering. Dude, what the fuck? She's supposed to be creepy, bro. Be terrified, tremble to your core, not whatever that is. Jeez. On a real note though, MiSide has a grand total of 5 whole enemies. Truly astonishing stuff. These guys were added purely for atmosphere, meaning the most challenge you'll get out of them is a free adrenaline rush. Or the afterlife. Most of these enemies are invulnerable, forcing you to run away from them. I believe the only thing you can actively fight against are the glitch spiders in Chapter 7. You're given a bat partway through, and what better use for it than to bash these freaks of nature like they're piñatas? Though they don't really fight back, so it's more akin to an obstacle than an enemy. Other than that, the only merit they really have is some extra lore on the side, being that these bugs are a byproduct of Creepy Mita's continued existence. Also within Chapter 7 is the Bug Monster, a looming anomaly confirmed to be a previous player and Tiny Mita's first friend. This monster is extremely slow and not really that dangerous, but it looks cool, I guess. Alternatively, the game also features a few lethal Mita encounters. The dummy Mita sections were probably the most terrifying parts of the game. For reference, their mechanics are similar to that of a weeping angel.
目を離さないこと。彼女たちはとってもシャイで、見られると固まっちゃうんだ。
Creepy Mita was also a scary confrontation from the second she becomes a bloodthirsty monster. I loved the intensity as she cuts off your escape repeatedly by teleporting between rooms. Lastly, Crazy Mita had some sinister encounters of her own. There's a stealth sequence within Chapter 3 where you run from hiding spot to hiding spot, a chase through winding hallways as she follows closely behind with a chainsaw, and a boss battle. Okay, boss battle is a strong word here, you just run side to side pressing buttons. The unsettling design and ambiance of MiSide's enemies acted in tandem to create decently scary scenarios. They were a little more than just any old spooky monsters, having their inclusions grounded in lore. But it's also worthwhile to acknowledge that gameplay surrounding the enemies was noticeably bare bones. Heck, a good chunk of the chapters didn't even have any hostile entities within them. All in all, the game's selection of enemies were effectively scary yet minuscule in number, with little mechanical depth, giving MiSide a subpar enemy rating of 4 out of 10. While the enemies were alright, MiSide's abundant areas on the other hand were excellent. I'll start by talking about what I view as the best example of AIHASTO's environmental creativity. What I am referring to is Mita's home. All of Mita's homes, that is. The layouts share the same familiar rooms within them. A bedroom, living room, kitchen, and bathroom. Pretty basic ideas, I'd say, yet that's also the sweet part. Each version felt different and unlike the others despite having the same areas. And this is because each house is tailored to suit its resident Mita. To explain what I mean, allow me to show you some of my favorite places. Cappy's home is practically practically basking in sunlight, which aligns with her lighthearted and energetic personality. Or what about Sleepy Mita's house, which is the complete opposite, being set under a starry night sky, reinforcing her relaxed nature. Then there is Tooty Mita's home, which is hand-drawn in pastel. Creepy Mita's, which contains missing textures everywhere, and Kind Mita's feels pretty homely with its simple design. Although the best has to be Ghostly Mita's place, which contrasts her depressing shadowy appearance with an all-pink room sporting floral patterns. And this isn't just here for the sake of it, it's to visually tell a narrative. Now, there is some degree of speculation here, but I think some ideas are heavily implied. The ruined drawings and broken mirrors here were damaged by Ghostly Mita since she wanted to forget everything about herself. Listening to some of her dialogue, we find out this is due to her past with Crazy Mita, who we can assume was responsible for stealing her face. This is further backed up by the fact that Ghostly Mita's closet literally leads to the very dwelling of these dummies. It's also possible that Crazy Mita was joined by Creepy Mita in her confrontation, as the clock in the room has missing textures oddly enough. On top of that, a collectible cartridge from Player 3 drops the name Flower Mita, which could be a reference to Ghostly Mita, as she is the only one with flower-themed walls. These environmental details help clue the player into the unspoken truth behind this enigmatic character, and I think that's just so damn cool. Up to now, I've just been yapping about the residences of these evil creatures, but there's also quite a few other neat locations you'll traverse. The backroom segments were definitely some of the more fascinating areas to explore. These sections gave the devs complete creative liberty to just go nuts with the world design. No need to make sense or be practical, simply make it interesting. It was exciting to see what kind of oddities you'd find within these nonsensical spaces. The first time you enter the between version passages, there is a looping staircase, a room containing chibi players, and an infinite hallway. As for that last one, if you keep walking in a single direction, a Mita with abnormally long legs crosses the room. Man, this probably how the people who spotted Bigfoot felt. In a separate hall, you can also bump into another living player who happens to be wearing a collar that strongly resembles your very own ring. It's a small interaction, but left a lot of intrigue early on in the game. Upon your second time through, you visit the pool rooms instead. These were full of those, weeping angel dummies that I was talking about earlier. So first off, hell nah! And second, it meant scrambling to navigate this creepy environment with a trail of feral robots on your tail. My danger radar kept going off in every room and I lived for it. The lowest level of the pool rooms particularly stood out to me. In the center is a faint light, along with plenty of petrified dummies. It was kinda sad in a way, knowing these Mitas longed for a light they couldn't have. Then I remembered that Crazy Mita killed my bro, and I stopped feeling so bad. As you exit the pool rooms, you open a metal door and are greeted by... Wow. The Fog is a hauntingly beautiful location blanketed in, well, fog. It's a series of catwalks overshadowed by walls going far beyond our view, and a massive planet or moon in the horizon. What's more, the main facility here consists of multiple mini compartments housing dummy Mitas in each one. And if you were to head around the side, there's even a broken compartment in which sits a console? Looking at the surroundings, you can see a lot of names and they... Anyways, as I was saying, on the central computer is a reply chain in which the phrase "praying for you, oh great Mita" is repeated continuously. Now, I'm pretty sure this is just an Easter egg to find, but how cool would it be if this is actually the room that Crazy Mita broke out of? I mean, we've already established that each of these compartments house dummy Mitas, and the fact that we see her reflection in the lower pool room indicates that she probably came from somewhere down here. I don't know. It's interesting to think about regardless, though. Now, I probably won't discuss these smaller locations in too much detail, but the core, railway, cathedral, and protagonist room also look amazing. These each had their own unique features, Easter eggs, and mysteries too. MiSide's locations were phenomenal for how short the game was. Like, seriously. Every iteration of Mita's home harmonizes with its chosen inhabitant, personality or behavior-wise. The between version locations were also incredibly put together, offering so many creative, silly, or even uncanny environments. Add to that the storytelling of these set environments, which was also handled superbly, typically telling a hidden narrative or providing context for the known story. Honestly, if I were to choose one downside with these locales, it was the linearity and brief time spent with each one, so I wasn't too attached to them by the end. I guess it just kind of felt like a tour through the game world where you go to the location, check it off your list, and then move on to the next. But when you're not busy running for your life from a horde of violent dummies, MiSide's areas truly shine, getting nothing less than a location rating of 9 out of 10. You could probably very well see this with the locations, but MiSide is honestly gorgeous. Starting with the characters, they have such simple designs at a glance. Yet they still manage to feel like completely separate characters, you know? It's a similar situation to their homes. Upon first inspection, they mostly have the same base, but there's always a layer of novelty in their design. It isn't just their hair, accessories, or clothing that changes. It's also their body language. I know, right? Who would have thought that I would talk about gestures when describing art style? Though this really helps to distinguish their characterizations. For instance, Cappy has her goofy little sway, short hair Mita uses a lot of instructional hand gestures, and Creepy's just tweaking the hell out. And I could keep going. Ghostly's always hanging her head low, Sleepy's in a constant state of nodding off, Tootie usually has her hands on her hips, and Mila crosses her arms constantly. It's these details combined with their different physical appearances that helps each Mita feel refreshing and new. That's not even considering the immense amount of work that went into their expressions. Mita, in all of her glorious forms, has a pretty dynamic face. Well, except for Tiny Mita, I don't know if her face is capable of having facial expressions. Chin up, kiddo. If the Joker can smile, you can too! Probably. There is a huge range of emotions present here, from excitement, mischief, and kindness over to fear, resentment, anger, and sadistic pleasure. Now, I don't know if that last one's actually an emotion, but Crazy Mita sure had it. The player himself also has visual changes throughout the game. As the journey progresses, he gets noticeable eye bags, and later on his eyes start erratically darting around. Hell, even the wound on his arm gradually heals over time, going from a very bloody bite mark to a vague red mark. Dialing back to the environments, they are also quite visually pleasing. I covered their level designs, but I just want to give a shout out to the lighting. During the loop chapter, the hallway alters its brightness multiple times. It goes from bright to light to dim to dark to finally pitch black. Oh, and to red. Can't forget about red. Additionally, the game's visual effects were awesome as well. The many iterations of Mita's homes in this game have dust or light particles floating in the air, which makes them feel more authentic. Even the 2D world has them. Though I really liked the distortion and glitch effects of MiSide. Sounds weird, but it is a horror game after all, so these moments were critical. Examples of this being after you eat the special sauce, the textures on Creepy Mita's house moving sporadically the moment she stands up, along with the glitching that happens when she teleports. Or near the end when you think you've escaped, just for your frame rate to plummet. And yeah, that wasn't the game's performance, it was Mita's! To be fair, you are in a game world, so all of these visual effects make complete sense and never felt out of place. Also, you can't forget about the decision to give the text in this game personality. What? I enjoyed this addition far more than I had any right to. I love the way it appears on screen and then falls down onto the ground before dissipating. Or how when the player is feeling more nervous emotions such as worried or scared, the text starts shaking. As if that wasn't enough already, then for certain characters, the word's physics change entirely. Tiny Mita's words sink before falling, Sleepy Mita's words can hardly stay floating, and Creepy Mita's words are sporadic and often misspelt. Or in the case of Ghostly Mita, they fly off into random directions, even colliding with each other, which is crazy attention to detail. Fittingly enough, the only character with a text box is 2D Mita in her visual novel-based world. The last thing I'll mention here in this section is the UI and main menu. A cool feature is that the pause menu actually changes depending on if you're in the real world, safe zone, or a danger zone. And the main menu itself is incredibly interactive, with Crazy Mita following your cursor, swatting you away if you click her face, nodding her head to the music, or looking upset if you click exit. There is also a small chance to get an alternate menu where she doesn't even try to hide her malevolence. Though I won't lie, that smile, that damn smile awakens something in me. MiSide's artistic direction deserves all the praise it gets. Character designs in both appearance and behavior are masterfully done, giving every Mita a unique feel. The special effects improved the environments and the unsettling moments. And praise thee for floating text that bases its style on the emotions and personalities of the characters. I do not have a single criticism of MiSide's art style, which obviously receives a perfect aesthetic rating of 10 out of 10. Ah yes, the sweet melody of murder. MiSide's collection of compositions is quite existent. They truly make nice sounds, and who can forget the rhythms they had? Okay, I'm gonna be straight with you guys. MiSide's soundtrack is not the most memorable, nor does it make me feel strongly in any particular way. Still, I enjoyed the music for what it was and the specific purpose it served. Alright, enough of those nothing burger statements, let's talk about it. Throughout your playthrough, music is scarcely in your face and more often than not blends into the background entirely. The soundtrack is full of ambient themes that were created to be unobtrusive yet still delightful to listen to. Looking at the Mita's homes, many have their own personal music. Cappy's is bouncy and energetic, just like the girl herself. Sleepy's includes chill lo-fi beats to strengthen the tranquil mood of the room. And Tootie's is playful or lively, similar to her own nature. Alternatively, the music within the backrooms gives off an ethereal feeling, and I think it fits the tone of the areas, as they are quite literally beyond the world, beyond your understanding. The music sounds echoey and distant, almost out of reach, and I think this works in the location's favor. And I guess there are some standout themes that I can recall. Tomagachi is the song that plays when the protagonist first opens the MiSide app and begins playing. As opposed to being greeted by cheery, cute, or energetic music, you are met by a peaceful and nostalgic song. But there's more to it than just that. The high-pitched whistles in the background make it sound sorrowful, maybe even hopeless. It's great at giving the player a nagging feeling that something is a bit off around here. Looking at the pause menus, they have their own themes as well. The real-world pause menu sounds calming and safe, like it's where you're supposed to be. The safe area pause menu sounds heavenly, but unfamiliar, which conveys that you're in a world you know nothing about. And the danger area pause menu sounds overwhelmingly ominous. It's basically a heads up that you're about to get your shit rocked. Thank you, game. However, my favorite two songs have to be those of the title screen. The normal one has this really lovely intro as the instruments all fade in, and then the lively part kicks up, and all of a sudden it's such a vibe. There's not even a hint of unease or sadness, just pure vitality all the way, which I think is smart because they don't want the players to instantly know this is a horror game, even if the tag is right there. But we don't talk about that. Something felt nice about booting up the main menu over and over and... Oh, well, that's certainly different. The secret menu has an equally hidden banger of a song attached to it. It initially resembles the opening portion of the normal main menu, just with an added darker bass line. Though, once the bass drop hits, it's a whole new level of intense. Another thing I thought the team did well were the mechanical uses of music, which were quite a nice touch. What I mean by this is when the soundtrack distorts during specific scenes. For a great example, look at this part of the infinite loop. An audio effect like this does an amazing job at disillusioning the player by removing any semblance of safety in that moment. Other notable uses of this effect were when Mila begs the player to stay with her, or when Crazy Mita revealed that our attempt to reboot her had actually failed. But I'd say the best instance of this is near the beginning when hearing noises coming from Mita's closet. Up until this point, everything had been relatively normal, but Mita's reaction paired with the music actively distorting sets the perfect tone for the rest of the game. The music of MiSide is ambient, yet still clearly quality. Be it the Mita's homes, which have themes reflecting their distinct personas, or the strange backroom locations utilizing otherworldly melodies to keep you on edge. Unfortunately, a majority of the songs in the game were unmemorable, and I could only recall a few by the time the credits were rolling. The main menu themes, though, were definitely bangers, and won't be leaving my playlist anytime soon. Even if the music typically had a complimentary role, I loved when it occasionally distorted, thus changing the current atmosphere of the game. MiSide's OST was scarcely front and center, but it admirably achieved its objective of immersing the player, obtaining a music rating of 7 out of 10. We're nearing the end of the video, so let's finish this by talking about MiSide's amount of content. Surprisingly, for a short game, there is a decent chunk of extra stuff to do. Let me just say that 100%ing MiSide was completely enjoyable from start to finish. I had no complaints the entire time. The game has 26 achievements for completionists to go for, with obvious ones like story progression or different endings, but 3 other categories as well. The bulk of minigames had challenge achievements, either for getting a certain score or winning without any mistakes. I didn't have too much trouble getting these, but it gave me more incentive to interact with the world's sillier side activities, not that I was gonna skip them anyways. Additionally, MiSide has a lot of achievements revolving around in-game secrets. Some of these were genuinely funny, like following Chibi Mita off the tram, which led to her shouting "piss off" at you and then hightailing it out of there. Or how about that time I ended up joining a cult? Good times. In addition to those achievements, MiSide has a total of 21 collectible cartridges to search for too. 12 of these were Mita profiles, which you can find in their respective versions. These were pretty easy to spot if you're looking out for them, typically just laying on a table or a shelf within their corresponding home. I will say that 2D's was really neat since it's actually found inside the visual novel world and you have to click the cartridge on the background in order to obtain it. Then there are 9 player profiles. These were a little trickier to find. Many were hidden out of sight or off the beaten path, requiring you to scrutinize the environment. Or use a guide. What? Of course not! I would never use a guide. That's crazy. No, not you. Last, there are costumes for Mita to don as well. These weren't particularly arduous to find, but they looked nice, so there's that. Overall, MiSide had a reasonable amount of content for its runtime. While achievements were engaging, they focused more on entertainment than they did difficulty or skill. Scouring the world for collectible cartridges was also fun and gave me all the more reason to pay attention to the beautiful locations found within it. And outfits were another thing to reward players' curiosity. They looked great. Although I can't stress enough that the game is still only 4 to 5 hours of gameplay with essentially no extra content outside the main story. But this'll probably change in the future as updates or DLC are released, especially Peaceful Mode. Until then, MiSide gets an alright content rating of 5 out of 10. And so MiSide has finally been completely critiqued. Well, here are the total scores for the game. I must stress that each rating does not necessarily determine the game's overall quality since preferences can vary greatly between individuals. After all, MiSide was a truly pleasant surprise and made for an amazing Christmas present. 5 months ago. With an art style that felt nostalgic along with many charming characters and locations, it was the gift that kept on giving. Of course, some aspects were stronger than others, but I was never once bored, disappointed, or frustrated with MiSide. Okay, you got me. The endings were a tad bit underwhelming. Nevertheless, it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I am eagerly awaiting any future updates. When are those coming out? Oh, hell no!
愛するあなた、私たちには十分に時間があるもの。
No, 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 no! Hey guys, if you enjoy this series, please consider subscribing, turning on notifications, and most importantly, tuning into the next one. It would be 100% appreciated. And please, let me know if there was anything I missed or something you believe should have been rated differently. Anyways, this has been 100% Hunter, and as always, I hope you follow your instincts and continue the hunt. Until next time, friends.